All right, before we get started, members who are joining remotely must be visible on screen for the purpose of identity verification, establishing and maintaining a quorum, participating in the proceedings, and voting. Those members must continue to use the software's platform video function while in attendance, unless they experience connectivity issues or other technical problems that render them unable to participate on camera. If a member experiences technical difficulties, they should contact the committee staff for assistance. Video of members' participation will be broadcast in the room and via the television internet feeds. Member participating remotely must seek recognition verbally, and they are asked to mute their microphones when they are not speaking. Members who are participating remotely are reminded to keep the software platform's video function on the entire time they attend the proceeding. Members may leave and rejoin the proceeding. If members depart for a short while for reasons other than joining a different proceeding, they should leave the video function on. If members will be absent for a significant period or depart to join a different proceeding, they should exit the software platform entirely and then rejoin it if they return. Members may use the software's platform chat function to communicate with staff regarding technical or logistical support issues only. Finally, I have designated a committee staff member to, if necessary, mute unrecognized members' microphones and cancel any inadvertent background noise that may disrupt the proceeding.
This hearing will come to order. I would like to begin by thanking our distinguished panel of witnesses. We look forward to your testimony. We have the Honorable Jill Hruby, Administrator of the National Nuclear Security Administration, the Honorable Deborah Rosenblum, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Nuclear, Chemical, and Biological Defense Programs, the Honorable John Plumb, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Space Policy, Vice Admiral Johnny Wolfe, Director of the U.S. Navy Strategic Systems Programs, and Lieutenant General James Dawkins, U.S. Air Force Deputy Chief of Staff for Strategic Deterrence and Nuclear Integration. I would like to ask unanimous consent that the remainder of my statement be inserted into the record. I request the witnesses keep their opening remarks to no more than 5 minutes, and that members respect the same time limit for their questioning. As members know, we're under some time pressure due to the pending cascade of votes, which I understand has been delayed a little bit. And if a miracle were to happen, we could actually complete the public portion of this hearing and get to the private session and complete that today. Otherwise, we will have to just do the public section today and then try to reschedule the classified hearing later. I now turn to my ranking member, Mr. Lamborn, for any opening remarks that he has.
And Mr. Chairman, I too will ask that my statement be introduced into the record, and at that point we can go straight into questions.
Awesome. I knew I liked you. Which witness would like to go first?
I thought, were we skipping the statement? We were going to skip the statement and just go straight to questions.
Well, I thought that we were, well, if y'all are all right to just go straight to questions, or do you want 5 minutes openings each? Would you like to do that?
If you'd like, we can go straight to, I think we've all been warned that you might want to go straight to questions, but we're also all have opening statements, so your call.
Well, if it's okay with members, including those on video, why don't we just go ahead and go straight to questions? Thank the witnesses for being here. You represent a tremendous amount of accumulated knowledge and expertise, also a large portion of the federal budget, and I want to start with you, Dr. Hruby. What can we do to help you achieve your tasks? Because NNSA is under a lot of time pressure. You have a lot going on. What can we do to help, for example, quicken the pace of pit production, including getting South Carolina started?
Well, thank you, Chairman Cooper, for the question. We feel that the budget we have is nearly enough to do everything we can imagine doing. Regarding pit production, we're planning to complete the design efforts of the 90% design of Savannah River and the Los Alamos pit production capabilities in 2024. So we'll be working on it through 2023. And we still have an objective to get to 2030 as close as possible on the Savannah River pit production facility. Here's the request, though. We do have an unfunded letter that is associated with what we now see as real issues arising in supply chain. for things that we need in the Savannah River pit production facility. So we are requesting some additional funds that the NWC is reviewing, we're reviewing this week, to allow us to do early procurements so that when the design is complete, we can begin construction and not be interrupted.
Sounds good. I'll turn it over to my ranking member, Mr. Lamborn, if he has questions.
Thank you. I have several. Administrator, I have another question for you. Last fall, Secretary Granholm notified Congress that NNSA would be unable to meet the statutory requirement to produce no fewer than 80 plutonium pits per year by 2030. This notification triggered a separate legal requirement under 50 U.S. Code 253A for the Nuclear Weapons Council to provide Congress with a comprehensive plan for getting the program back on track. However, the Nuclear Weapons Council recently informed us that no plan would be provided. As a member of the Nuclear Weapons Council, can you tell us why the Council has chosen not to comply with this requirement to provide Congress with a plan to correct these deficiencies?
I think what we have in this question is maybe a misunderstanding. Our intent is to, as a council, to make sure that we understand what we can do with the pits that we think are reasonable to produce and the timeframes to produce them. And the statutory requirement, as I understand it, is to say whether or not we'll produce 80 pits per year by 2030. I don't know if that's your question, but the council, I think, is fully committed to doing everything that we need to do statutorily. And if we're missing something,
what it seems to me that we're missing is that since you can't reach that goal, what are you going to do instead to make up for that? Secretary Plumb, do you want to throw in something?
Yes, Congressman. So aware of your the statutory request is how would we break glass to get to 2030 and get to the 80 pits by 2030. Nuclear Weapons Council, including everyone here that sits in those meetings, we don't see any path to doing that. There are places where throwing more money at a problem just wastes money. And so instead we're looking at what's the fastest way to get to 80. And we are waiting for a critical design review. I think Undersecretary Hruby or Assistant Secretary Rosenblum could speak to that. That will give us more and better fidelity on where to get to next and how fast we can do it.
Yes, Congressman. As the staff director for the Nuclear Weapons Council, I can elaborate a little bit. There were 2 letters that were combined that was sent from the NWC chair. One that spoke to the pit production, which you've just gone over now, in terms of not being able to reach that by 2030, coupled with then a discussion about the budget certification and whether there was a need for additional monies in order to meet actually 2030. What the NWC is doing now is they are working very closely between Department of Energy as well as Department of Defense to look at where there may be some actions that can be taken by DOE that will bring it as close as possible to 2030. And that work is underway right now and will be through the summer. And we're expecting to have some initial recommendations by early fall when it comes time to be producing some of the guidance.
Okay, that does help me understand better, although I do want to have the comprehensive plan that is called for under the laws that we've passed here in this committee. Secretary Plumb, I have a couple questions on the B-83. The rationale of this administration to retire the B-83 gravity bomb without a replacement capability is not clear to me. In fact, it is my understanding that not only is there no replacement capability, but the process to identify candidates for a replacement capability has not even yet started. However, the hard and deeply buried target set remains a requirement for Admiral Richard and U.S. Strategic Command. How does the administration justify removing this capability from our strategic arsenal which will effectively prevent our military from achieving its deterrence requirements?
Thank you, Congressman Lamborn. So I look at this problem as actually two separate problem statements. The first question is, what about the B-83? Second question is hard and deeply buried targets. So let me start with the second. Hard, deeply buried targets are a problem. It's a problem we're committed to solving. And we have a study underway, I believe, for that. And that is an ongoing conversation we're going to have with this committee and within the department to figure out how to solve it, because our enemies are digging deeper and harder. Separate problem, B-83 does not solve all of these issues. Those of increasingly limited utility, and retiring it does not change the hard and deeply buried target problem set. A lot of this conversation, I'm afraid we have to defer to the classified session whenever we have that.
Okay, well, I want to follow up on that part of the issue, and I want to raise a side issue with the B-83. I realize that there is a smaller target set given advances in our defenses. However, that target set still does exist. And a critical part of our deterrence posture is ensuring that our competitors don't think that they have an advantage based on perceived capability gaps. So this decision codifies a capability gap and creates an opening for them to consider exploiting. I don't think we should give them an inch when it comes to our deterrence posture. And this also would include the administration's decision to cancel or stop funding the SLCM SLCM-N program, even though Russia has fielded a similar system for years. So why not develop a replacement plan to go after hard and buried targets before retiring the B-83?
So, Congressman, we have a time phase problem with the way you've just phrased that. Again, the hard and deeply buried target problem set is something we're focused on. The B-83 doesn't give us that solution for
it may not give a complete solution, but
Yes,
it
sir.
gives a partial solution more than we have otherwise.
of increasingly limited value.
But right now, it is a better solution than anything else out there on the table in our arsenal.
If the gentleman would yield, we might be able to discuss this more fully in closed session.
Okay, let's.
Does the gentleman have other questions?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Mr. Moulton?
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I have just one question, but it's a philosophical question that I think is actually important for the American people to hear. And I would invite any one of the five of you to answer it. Over the next 10 years, we're going to spend $634 billion on modernizing our nuclear arsenal. Not building a nuclear arsenal, because we already have quite an extensive one, but simply modernizing a way to wipe out all human life on this planet. I sit on this committee because I understand that it's important. But how would you explain to your kids why we're making this kind of investment? Yesterday, it took me exactly 12 hours and 5 minutes to go the 450 miles from Boston to Washington. Why? Because our entire transportation system breaks down due to a thunderstorm. We're the only developed nation in the world that doesn't have high-speed rail, which would have a train every 20 minutes that takes 3 hours to go from Boston to Washington. And with $634 billion in 10 years, you could connect every city in the nation with 250-mile-per-hour trains. The point is, we're making serious trade-offs to invest this kind of money in our nuclear arsenal. Someday, my 3-year-old's going to ask, why are you voting for this, Daddy? How do you explain this to your kids?
Can you hear me? Is this on?
Yes, you can. Thank you, John.
So what I would tell my children is that it's a dangerous world. It's increasingly more dangerous as we've seen what's happened with Ukraine, as we hear about the strategic breakout with China, of course, North Korea and others. Those countries seem to value nuclear weapons quite a bit. In fact, they've all, with the exception of North Korea, Of course, China's now developed a triad, as Russia's had a triad for years. They're not stopping any of their work on new types of weapon systems. And what we found through the years is the best deterrent to prevent a nuclear conflict from happening is to ensure that what we have on the United States side is safe, secure, modernized, and credible. And so that's what I would tell my children. It's what I do tell my children. And that if we were going to have a triad, which the administration and previous administrations have decided that we will, that we've got to make sure whatever we put into the field remains safe, secure, reliable, and credible.
Admiral?
So I would echo what General Dawkins said, and I would also, sir, point out that you made the point we have an extensive triad as it is today. That is a true statement. But if I could add on to what General Dawkins said, but to be credible, safe, and reliable, these systems age out. So we're not asking to go put exquisite new systems in place. We're not asking to go build to new requirements. We're just asking to modernize what we've got today because over the last 50 plus years, it has proven it works. But it's got to be reliable and credible because it's not about what we believe, it's what Russia and China believe. And the day they believe that our systems don't work and they're not credible is the day that they may ask the question, is today the day? So that's exactly why we're asking to modernize what we've got, not increase, not grow numbers. It's just modernize what we have today because we've proven throughout time these systems perform exactly what we want them to perform, which is deterrence, credible deterrence from anybody ever challenging our way of life.
Anyone else? Are we good?
No, I would just add that, you know, and building on what has already been said here, that the administration took a hard look at this issue and looked at the threat picture and where our adversaries are expected to be 10, 15 years from now, and felt that certainly merited a decision to fully fund the triad, and that's what's in the President's budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman's time has expired. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, Mr. Chairman, we're going to miss your service, but we wish you well in the future.
Thank you.
With that, Secretary Hruby, I really appreciate your service as a former Deputy General Counsel myself of DOE, where I had the great opportunity to serve with the very legendary Eric Figge, who retired last Friday. He has just been an inspiration of service to our country, and he will be missed. Secretary Hruby, in your letter to the House Armed Services Committee, you stated that the President's budget request of NNSA is $500 million below the requirements-based budget submitted by DOE. This additional funding would allow activities to be started as early as possible for the Savannah River Plutonium Processing Facility and support meeting the requirements of 80 pits per year as close to 2030 as possible to achieve peace through strength as a deterrence to Putin, Chinese, Iranian, and North Korean modernization. Can you break down the $500 million figure for the NNSA unfunded priorities letter? What is the plan to spend and how this additional funding will help mitigate risk? What are the challenges to the current trajectory of getting to 80 pits per year if this funding is not obtained?
Thank you, Congressman. The $500 million request is largely to purchase equipment that will go in the Savannah River pit production facility and allow us to build 80 pits per year after the construction is complete. What we have found in other large construction projects, particularly the uranium processing facility, is that, and with COVID, is that there are some pieces of nuclear qualified equipment and glove boxes that are taking a very long time in part because we're doing so much modernization. And so what we would like to do is is specify and procure some equipment earlier. This is essentially bringing up costs from later in the program to earlier in the program, so that it will be, we will be able to do construction as uninterrupted as possible.
Thank you very much. And Madam Secretary, I'm grateful for the news that the high winds around Los Alamos National Security Laboratory have subsided, allowing firefighters to battle back against the deadly brush fires in the area. This underscores the need to solidify a two-site solution for plutonium pit production, which would provide redundancy in the event of further unexpected events that could shut down this crucial part of our nuclear deterrence strategy and modernization efforts. What other benefits does the two-site solution provide that mitigates risk and prevents delays to our crucial nuclear modernization needs?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And we have said all along that we believe this two-site solution does two things. It's the most efficient and cost-effective approach because we can take advantage of a qualified nuclear facility that was the shell that was already constructed for the mixed metal oxide facility, and we will get resilience. There are other things that can, any accident, even if it doesn't hurt people, we have to investigate completely when it involves plutonium. Any security breach, there are a number of things that could happen that could close a plutonium facility while being investigated or while being fixed. But the fires are a good example of why resilience is so important in today's world. And yeah, so thank you for that question. But we think this is both cost-effective approach, best utilizes talent, and provides the most resilience.
Thank you for your insight. And also, I want to thank you for highlighting the importance of cybersecurity at our nuclear facilities in your testimony. I'm grateful that the efforts of the Adjutant General Van McCarty of the South Carolina Guard and Chancellor Daniel Heineman of the USC Aiken for investing in the Dreamport facility, which will partner with industry and defense to train the next generation of cybersecurity experts. What are the challenges faced by NNSA for recruiting and retaining high-performing cybersecurity professionals?
I think the challenges we have are similar to the challenges in other areas, that this is a highly paid profession in great demand. So we have to, the first thing we have to do is get people who really care about the mission. We can't forget to stress the mission. People get to do incredible work for the American people when they protect our systems from cyber. And secondly, we have to pay competitive, as close to competitive salaries and benefits as we can, or at least fair salaries and benefits, so that we can attract these people. So we are doing everything we can to get people hooked on our mission as early as possible in their education, and everything we can to convince them to stay once they've come. But it is a challenge.
The gentleman's time
And
has
to be by state, I'm working with Congressman Rick Allen, Georgia and South Carolina. Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired. Mr. Morelli?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I just want to start by saying my district is home to the Laboratory for Laser Energetics, LLE, at the University of Rochester, a key part of the NNSA's inertial confinement fusion program, which is a critical component of the stockpile stewardship program that maintains a safe, secure, and effective nuclear deterrent. I'm glad to have the opportunity to discuss this program in the FY23 budget, which leads me to my question, Madam Administrator. The NNSA's inertial confinement fusion facilities, like the one I mentioned in my district, are the only facilities capable of accessing and studying the high energy density conditions responsible for 99% of the yield of our nuclear devices. And as such, they are a crucial component of the science-based stockpile stewardship program that underlies our confidence in the safety, reliability, and effectiveness of our nuclear stockpile. Despite the ICF program's critical role in our national security and strong support from this committee and from the Congress. NNSA has routinely requested harmful cuts in the program in the president's budget requests, including again this year. So I wonder if you could just describe how the proposed cuts impact our nation's high energy density science capabilities and NNSA's ability to fulfill its stockpile stewardship mission now and in the future.
Well, thank you. As you stated, our ICF, our inertial confinement fusion program is very important to our stockpile stewardship program, and the three facilities, your facility, Omega, the National Ignition Facility, and the Z machine all contribute to that mission. Our request is, we believe, a balanced request. It's the same request as in fiscal year 22 for this program and the facility. We do have a lot of things on our plate. We want to maintain the science, but we have to balance that with all the deliverables we have in infrastructure modernization and weapon modernization. So we are fully committed to continuing to fund the inertial confinement fusion program, the laboratory for laser energetics, and the Omega facility, but we're just doing it in a balanced manner.
Well, we may, I may continue to raise this with you and continue to talk to committee colleagues about that. I do want also just if you could just further comment on the request notes that the ICF facilities are aging and will need significant investments to sustain them. A point I've also raised before, and Congress has requested the NNSA provide a strategic plan for recapitalizing, upgrading, and maintaining the major ICF facilities. Can you provide a sense of when NNSA may provide that plan and what level of resources will be needed to meet the sustainment requirements?
Yeah, thank you. We are developing the 10-year ICF facility and infrastructure plan, and we have, you know, we actually with the new we are Marv Adams. We are talking about this every day, actually. How are we going to get the money to sustain our science facilities? Why we need so much money to do our production modernization program. We appreciate being asked for a plan, and we're working on it. I'm sorry, I'll have to get back with you on a date. I don't have a date I can promise today.
And I just really quickly, you personally outlined challenges confronting NNSA workforce and the need to meet mission requirements and delivering on objectives. We have 400 scientists, engineers, and staff just at the LLEE, and we train students in inertial confinement, fusion, and high energy density physics. We play a critical role in attracting talent. Can you talk a little bit about what you intend to do to try to not only achieve workforce needs, but also promoting expansion of the workforce so that it promotes racial and economic equity within that workforce?
Absolutely. We have a lot of university programs, and we're very proud of the minority serving education programs that we have. And in fact, we're concerned about all elements of our workforce, from crafts and technologists through PhD scientists, and LLE serves a very important purpose for creating scientists. And we're also looking to and continue our MISIP programs, our Minority Serving Institution Partnership programs, and education programs. And today we just announced a $5 million program aimed at technology, crafts workers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize for going over, but I yield back.
Yeah. Gentleman's time has expired. Mr. Desjardins.
I'll try to ask punctual questions and hopefully get the same answers, Ms. Hruby. Last year, Congress increased the minor construction threshold to $25 million. How helpful was that? Can you just outline a couple of successes, and how would you benefit if we were to do that even more, such as Mr. Bird and your predecessor had asked for?
Yeah, thank you, and thanks so much for increasing this threshold. I actually got some statistics on this. Since we changed the level from 10 million to 20 million, we have completed 16 projects and have 43 new projects underway and 10 proposed for fiscal year 23. If we raise with the threshold at 25 million now, 2 projects are underway and 2 projects are proposed for 23. I'm a big fan of these minor construction projects because we can streamline them. They're much more efficient. They're much faster. And I think the higher threshold is an innovative way to help us with office space, with general laboratory space, and non-nuclear construction, and really appreciate the support that's been provided. Okay. And would love to see it go even higher.
Okay, well, I can probably guess the answer to this, just in follow-up with inflation at 8% and construction materials soaring 20% or more. Would you be supportive of pegging the minor construction threshold to the inflation rate so you don't have to come back every year or two to make the same ask?
I would like that. I mean, from my perspective, if we could get it to the right level and then increment it by inflation, that would be perfect. And I would suggest that a level above $25 million before we start incrementing for inflation is worth a look.
Okay. And General Dawkins, if you had to describe one thing that is obstructing your ability to do your job successfully, what would that be?
I don't know that it is obstructing our ability to do it right now, but it's clear or consistent and stable funding. As we move forward into the nuclear modernization bow wave, it's going to be more imperative that we are able to have new starts, and with inflation coming in as well, that's an important piece there. So basically, the less CRs we can have, the much better place we'll be, particularly with regard to MILCON, GBSD, MILCON, or Sentinel. I'm sorry, MILCON is such a big part of Sentinel. But again, all of these programs are starting to ramp up at the same time, and it's critical we don't have any margin left to delay programs. So I would say consistent and stable funding with your support.
Okay, thank you. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Mr. Garamendi.
A lot of questions need to be asked and answered. With regard to the Sentinel, General Dawkins, we need detailed information. You just mentioned MILCON. At the moment, the detail needed is not available. Please provide it. There was discussion, General Dawkins, you said this, but this goes to all of you. You're talking about a bow wave. The last time the bow wave was discussed here was at least 5 years ago. I've not seen any recent updates based upon inflation and other matters. I'd like to have that, so please, if you would, if not to the committee, at least to me. Also, Ms. Hruby, how many pits can be produced at Los Alamos?
Our goal is to produce 30 pits per year reliably.
When will you reach that production level?
2026.
2026. General Dawkins, when do you need the 87-1 to put on your new Sentinel?
Sir, the Sentinel will field with the 87-0 IOC of 2029.
Okay, does that 87-0 need new pits?
The 87-1 will field in 2030.
87-0 does not need a new pit.
The 87-0 does not need a new pit. The 87-1 requires the pits, and we are working with the Nuclear Weapons Council and NNSA to ensure that we.
I don't have much time. Just the answer to the question, please. So the 87-1 requires a new pit. When do you need the 87-1?
We are planning to integrate it in 2030. 2030.
And how many will you integrate each year beginning in 2030 for the next decade?
Sir, I don't have that information with me. I can certainly take that for the record and provide that.
Please do. The point here is, if you're able to produce beginning in 26, 30 per year, by 2030 you will have how many? 120 in stock, right? And then each year thereafter, you'll produce 30. Will you repurpose more than 30 per year in the decade 30 to 40? The answer is probably not. And therefore, why do you want to spend $500 million on Savannah River when, in fact, we don't need Savannah River to meet the 87-1 pit production? Ms. Hruby, your question, the answer, please.
Yeah. Well, the reason that we're making new pits, all the pits in the stockpile are aging. The pits in the stockpile were last produced.
Okay, so specifically tell me which pits and which weapons will you be needing new, which weapons will you be needing new pits and when?
Yeah, so that information we're still developing as Nuclear Weapons Council, but if we sustain the stockpile for another 30 years or more, which kind of looks like we're doing, we will need more pits than the 87 one.
So with the next 30 to 50 years, we're going to start, we need Savannah River now, and you need $500 million now, because you might need, you clearly do not need Savannah River to produce the pits necessary for the 87-1. If there are other weapons that need pits, please deliver that specific information.
We will.
Okay? And a general question in the next 1 minute. What does it take for deterrence? What does it take for deterrence? Triad? A new Sentinel? Columbia-class submarines? What does it take? I've never heard a rational answer to that question. I've heard history, which you just gave us. Well, for 50 years it's worked. What does it take? Be happy to have a discussion later. My time is about to expire, but until we have a clear answer to that question, and don't tell me because it worked for the last 50 years it's going to work for the next 50. I don't buy that. I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. Mr. Langevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank our witnesses for their testimony today. I wish I were there in person, but let me begin following on the deterrence issue and kind of questioning. So as we know, nuclear deterrence operations do not take place in a vacuum. I want to know, how is the Air Force thinking about other capabilities like cyber, space, conventional capability, et cetera, when it comes to integrated deterrence? Dr. Plumb, that probably is a question most appropriate for you.
Thank you, Congressman Langevin. So I want to be clear, integrated deterrence is very important. It's how do we get the most out of our capabilities and the most deterrence function out of all. It does not reduce the role of nuclear weapons as a bedrock of our deterrent function. But when you mention the different functional offices, several of which I have policy responsibility for, I think they all come into play in 21st century warfare. As we look at China on the ascendancy as our pacing challenge, the ability to deliver effects both in cyber and in space, and using our nuclear deterrent as our kind of bedrock to prevent a nuclear level conflict. I think they're all important. They all need work, as you know from our other hearings as well. And I believe the entire department would agree that we are pushing hard on all of those things. Those are all functions that we need to be well invested in and have the right personnel and the right training and the right equipment.
And how are we broadcasting that to our enemies and adversaries so that they understand what our posture is? And let me ask you this: how is the Russian Federation's invasion of Ukraine affected your perspective on integrated deterrence?
Thank you. I would suggest that the answer to those two questions is the same. We're seeing a version of integrated deterrence every day in the way Russia is being bogged down in Ukraine, the way we've been able to raise allies across NATO in support of supplying Ukrainians with weapons and information, the way we are using our intelligence and our cyber and our overhead assets for imagery to declassify and release information ahead of the Russian intent to basically not allow them to weaponize the information sphere. These are all related. I think it's obviously early in this approach, but so far what I see is effectiveness, and I see it's a learning curve for the Russians, learning some for us, and I also believe China is watching and getting the message as well that you shouldn't be messing with us.
Ms. Hruby and Dr. Plumb, let me turn to something else with respect to cyber. As with any part of our nuclear triad, we must absolutely ensure that we have robust cybersecurity practices in place. I want to know how are your organizations ensuring that we have cyber baked in to our nuclear capabilities?
Yes, sir. Absolutely, cyber is absolutely important. And as you know well, cyber warfare is just at its beginning, and so baking in robust cyber defenses, not just as a perimeter but in depth, is absolutely essential. And of course, that extends to our nuclear infrastructure, not just the weapons themselves, but our platforms, and also our, NNSA has already spoken to that. It is part of every meeting that I am in.
I just add from an NNSA perspective that while we've been working on cyber and enterprise assurance, the 23 budget calls that out as a separate project activity and a separate line item, so it will be quite visible, and you'll see a sustained effort on our part.
Yeah, absolutely critical going forward. The last thing I'll ask, and this may have to go for the record, Ms. Hruby, I'm concerned about issues that I've heard with respect to recruitment and retention from several nuclear weapons labs. How are you working to retain that top talent, and what can Congress do to help?
Yeah, very briefly. First, it is a problem. Second, we continue to think mission is our biggest asset, but we offered this year to our M&O contractors a mid-year salary adjustment to try to keep pace with inflation and stem attrition. We're looking at benefits packages, and we hope you will support our efforts to stay competitive.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the witness's testimony today, and I yield back the balance of my time. Lots of time expired.
The gentleman's time has expired. We are about 25 minutes into the first vote in a long series, so we will not have time to move into closed session as I had hoped, unless there is an urgent question from a member right now. I plan on adjourning this hearing. Is there an urgent question from any of our colleagues? If not, then I want to thank the witnesses. I regret the inconvenience. I appreciate my colleagues who showed up for the hearing coming, and I look forward to rescheduling the closed session, which I've always found to be more valuable than the public session. So hopefully we can find a time that's convenient for everyone, and hopefully no votes will interfere in that closed session. So I thank the witnesses. The hearing is adjourned.